So nearly 2 years ago, I started working on this 2-minute cinematic poem that I almost never shared. Even though I've made hundreds, if not thousands of videos, I don't think I've ever cried this much during an edit. It's about feeling trapped in a rhythm that isn't yours and trying to find your way back to yourself. I made this video with my friend Felix, who acted in the film, and we filmed it over 5 different days, even in the middle of a storm. This video became something much more than just a little creative project. But before I explain more, I want to show you the full piece first, and after that I will share how I tried to turn my own feelings into a story, into images, sound, and eventually into the film you're about to watch now. So it's in Dutch, but I've added some English subtitles so you can understand the meaning. So have fun watching and I'll speak to you after that. Het gaat te snel. Ik kan niet meer, maar ik moet door. Het gaat te snel, ik wil niet meer. Waar doe ik het allemaal voor? Doorgaan, verder komen, blijven gaan, steeds sneller, meer. Geen tijd om stil te staan. Mee in het tempo van de rest, want ik wil ook iemand zijn. Niet een schim in de menigte, onopgemerkt, klein. Maar dit is niet mijn ritme, ik hou de maat niet bij. Ik wil zo graag voelen, maar dit tempo maakt het onmogelijk voor mij. Toch moet je mee in de stroom, want dat wordt van je verwacht. Of is dit een illusie, een waarheid door onszelf bedacht? Bedriegen we onszelf? Is het één grote schijn? Een oneindige race naar een denkbeeldige finishlijn? Er is altijd een tol te betalen. Soms lijkt het een onschuldige strijd. Maar in een race als deze raak je jezelf zomaar kwijt. Vanaf nu ga ik in mijn eigen maat verder. Voel en kijk ik om mij heen. Stap voor stap. Ik zoek mijn eigen weg, mijn eigen stem en ontdek eindelijk wie ik werkelijk ben. So I hope that came across even with the subtitles. So before I talk about scenes, about the sound and about the editing, I think it's really important to explain where this film came from, because it didn't just start with a clear plan. Around the time that I made this, I just had left my creative video agency that I had been building together with my best friend for over 7 years. And creatively, I felt really lost. So, long story short, I just started writing down a few sentences about what I was feeling, and I slowly turned those first sentences into the full poem it is now. And at some point, I just thought maybe this could become a film. But before I could think about the visuals, I first had to understand the story inside the poem. And when I looked at the poem, I started to see that it already had a small emotional journey inside it, because it starts with pressure, you know, it's the feeling of moving too fast, but still having to continue. And then underneath that, there's a bigger question as well, because why am I even running? Am I doing this because I want to, or because I feel like this is what everyone expects from me? With that question, there's more of a story. There is someone who starts inside the pressure, then slowly realizes he is trapped in a rhythm that isn't his, and then starts looking for another way. So it's not a big plot with many events happening, but it's more of an emotional journey, and still a lot of story is inside that. And if you've watched my videos about the 5-line story method, this is actually a pretty nice example of how that can also exist inside something that is much more poetic. So once I had the poem and the story, the next challenge was turning this into actual scenes, because I wanted people to feel it through different layers of the film. And the first layer was the race. That's why I wanted to film a lot of shots of Felix running on different places, because for me that really represents the feeling of always having to continue. Then there is the empty beach, and that scene was much more about feeling lost. He's here alone, with quite some space around him, but he still doesn't really know where to go, and there's a lot of anxiety involved. In the end, he even collapses because of desperation. And then there are the shots in the black box, like we created those in the office, and they were more connected to the inner world of the film. I really wanted to show the pressure and the discomfort that you don't really see from the outside, but that you can still feel inside your body. So those shots became more abstract, and I wanted to put him in some uncomfortable positions as well and show the naked skin just because it feels more vulnerable. And then there's the storm, and that became the emotional climax of the film. We filmed that on a day with a lot of wind and big waves, and I actually went into the water myself together with Felix while filming with my underwater housing. And that scene still is one of my favorite parts because it can still mean different things to anyone who watches, you know. Is he giving up there? Is he completely desperate? Or is he finally ready to face the storm and embrace anything that comes at him? And I really wonder what you felt there when you saw it. So if you're watching this, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, months later, we filmed the final water scene, which was completely different. The sea was almost flat, which actually doesn't happen a lot here in the Netherlands. But this was really what I wanted this video to be. The character going into the water with the storm, making it feel like the video is over, but then coming back when the storm is over and there's calm water, representing a new beginning. So each scene carried a different layer of feeling. You know, the running was about pressure, the empty beach made the character feel lost, the black box scenes showed the inner tension, the storm became the climax, and the calm water gave the ending a sense of release. When you want to make something emotional, you can just ask yourself, what are the different layers of this feeling? What does the pressure look like? Or how does the loneliness look like? And suddenly, your scenes, they don't just become places, but they become part of your story with true emotion in it. And this is also where music becomes really important, because once you know what a scene is supposed to feel like, you want the music to actually match that feeling, of course. And that's really why I'm happy that this video is sponsored by Audio, because they just released, I think, something really cool, which is called Hans 2.0. And with Hans, you can search for music in a much more conversational way. So, for example, I could describe a scene like a person walking into the sea during a storm, dark and emotional. And then Hans helps me to find tracks based on that creative context, and from there you can really keep refining, like make it less dramatic or make it more hopeful. You can even upload an image or a full client brief or even client feedback, and it will help you to find music that matches. So they don't use AI to generate music, but really to connect you to the right track, and I think that's pretty cool. You can try Hans for free on audio.com to see if it's something for you, and if you want to sign up, you can use my code TimRunia to get 70% off on Audio Pro for the first year. So thank you, Audio, for sponsoring this video. You can have great shots and a good story, but the film still needed something human. And that is where Felix became such an important part of it. I just knew him from surfing, and there was just something open and vulnerable in him that I just thought was really right for this film. So crazy enough, I just asked him if he wanted to be a part of it. And now when I look back at the film, I really can't imagine anyone else in it. Felix really brought something honest to it. And those were his own emotions. How he looks around, how he moves, the anxiety. And then there is that scream. And it still hits me every time when I see it, because it was so real, you know. And it almost makes me a bit emotional. This didn't happen before, but yeah, for me that moment almost feels like a shared emotion between him and me, because he was expressing something from himself, but somehow I recognized myself in it. There's a special connection between us now, I think, because we just went through this whole thing together.
Stel het me goed.
So once we had filmed everything, the real shaping happened in the music, the sound design and the edit, of course. While I was writing the poem, I was already listening to different tracks, and sometimes when I'm looking for music, I don't even know exactly what I'm looking for yet. And then suddenly there is a song that gives me a feeling. And when I found the first track, I immediately felt it, because it was dark, it had some heaviness in it, but it slowly builds towards this climax, and that really matched the emotion of the first part of the film so well. At the end of the film I used a second song, and that one felt much more hopeful and a bit softer, but still I think very cinematic and beautiful. Music just really became a big part of the structure, as it always does. And to be honest, it also changed the writing a little bit, because in the end I removed a few lines from the poem because I just felt like it didn't really fit in the rhythm anymore. So the music wasn't just something that sits underneath the film, but it really becomes part of the emotion and part of the whole story altogether. For the sound design, I wanted some parts to feel really uncomfortable, especially the black box scenes, because those moments represented the inner pressure. So what you don't hear, but you do feel, I think, is the underwater ambience that I put underneath all of those scenes, because I wanted it to feel a little bit like being held underwater, like adding the uncomfortable feeling. And I also added small textures here, like sounds of cracking rocks. And I think sound design is one of the most powerful ways to make a video feel more emotional, because sound doesn't always have to be very literal. And sometimes a sound that makes no logical sense makes total emotional sense. So really keep that in mind. Now, when I edit videos like these, I really try to keep things more intuitive and just trying different orders, different shots, removing some lines and watching it back a lot. And slowly the film starts finding its shape. Some people would argue that as an editor you should not watch back your timeline all the time. But I think with emotional pieces like this, it's really important, because you don't just want to watch, you want to feel everything. And that's probably why I cried so much while editing it, because at some point I wasn't just only watching Felix move through the storm anymore, I was also watching myself move through something. And that's when I realized that sometimes you don't fully understand what you're making until you're really making it. And that's what happens all the time, I can promise you. Some of the meaning was already there from the beginning. You know, the running was about trying to keep up, the calm water was about a new beginning, but a lot of it only became clearer later, especially in the edit. Just as an example, there's this shot of the water that I used under the line about the endless race, and when I placed it there, it suddenly made sense, but I didn't film that shot with that exact line in mind. I just filmed it because in that moment, I just felt like filming it. And I think this is really important to say, and for you really important to understand, because when you watch someone else's finished video, it can look like everything was figured out from the start. But for me, that's almost never how it works. A lot of meaning appears while making it. So if you want to make more personal work, I don't think you need to understand everything before you start. Sometimes you just need a feeling to begin. Then you follow it. You film something, you try different things, move things around in the edit, and slowly the project starts to show you what it wants to become. Also, before I go, one last small thing. Last week I quietly launched my new course, the Story Flow Process, to my email list only. And I haven't done a public launch yet, but since you're still here, if you are still here, I wanted to give you the chance to join early too, or just to check it out, to have a look at the website. I will leave a link below. But of course, I'll put the playlist up here with videos that also can help you to turn your own ideas into story-driven videos. Thank you so much for watching this one. I really hope you liked it and it inspired you, because this one was a really special one for me. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye.